we are super excited to welcome in our first guest of today's program, Ryan Clark of The Pivot. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We are great, thanks. We are fresh off of James Gladstone being introduced as the Jaguars general manager. Of course, a few weeks after Liam Coen was announced as the head coach. And so, Ryan, that leads me to my first question as far as coach-centric teams. We know that the Rams are coach-centric. It has worked for them. The Jaguars are kind of borrowing from that philosophy and creating kind of an East Coast Rams. And the Jaguars will be coach-centric. What do you think that exactly means?
You know, I don't necessarily know what that means. I think what you want to do is you want Liam Coen to run what happens on the football field, right? You're obviously going to go out, if you're the general manager, and you want to make sure that you're collecting the right sort of tools, the right sort of people, the right sort of players to be able to allow Liam Coen to fulfill his vision as it pertains to the football field. You got to think about where he's been. You know, you go back to Will Levis at Kentucky. Obviously, he was with the Rams as well, which will be a connection there, but also in Tampa Bay and what he was able to do with that offense and Baker Mayfield and Baker throwing for over 4,500 yards, throwing for over 40 touchdowns. A huge part of why you go and you bring Liam Coen in is to allow him to work with Trevor Lawrence and make this offense what he's made so many offenses that he's been present with before. And it has to be coach-centric if that's going to happen when things are being run at the executive level as it pertains to the football field. To me, that's never a recipe for success.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for hopping on with us. We really, really appreciate it. Now that you've given us your thoughts on Liam Coen, give us your thoughts on the 34-year-old new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, James Gladstone. Surprised by the hire? Was this a name that you knew of in NFL circles?
Saying general manager.
Yes, correct.
I didn't know much, you know. I can also, you know, be honest from my standpoint of executives. You know the guy that's the general manager. You know the guy that's the face. But what we see in so many of these sort of hires is they want to know who you work with. And then by speaking to the people that you work with, you look at their success. What part did you play in that success? What are some of the things that you had the ability to learn? And I think if you can find a young, up-and-coming, hungry executive to take over the GM job, I believe those are sometimes the people that are the most aggressive. Those are the people that are the most daring. And they're also willing to listen and be collaborative. And it's always sort of the strange it's a strange process when you hire your coach before you hire your GM. A lot of times you want those people's visions to be married, right? So if you can bring them both in, let's think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, right? They came in together, and so that vision is married. How is the new GM, new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars going to find a way to marry their visions as they move forward into free agency, as they move forward into the draft, and then throughout the season and maneuvering the roster to give Liam Coen the best opportunities to be successful?
Ryan, I wanted to ask you, first of all, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I want to say go Irish. And I know that it was Jordan in that Penn State game had a really big play, and I know it was a big moment on a big stage, and it was really exciting to watch that. But it made me tie into Marcus Freeman and how he took over that team, and you just feel this different energy since he's become the head coach there at Notre Dame. And so we've talked here a lot about the issues when it comes to some of the head coaching, when it just felt like something was missing. And Liam Coen already early on feels like he brings, and Trevor used the word juice. So talk to us a little bit about the difference and just how immediate the right coach can just turn things around.
Well, I mean, I think you can look, you know, at the Washington Commanders and what Dan Quinn was able to do with that team and turning that team around immediately. Even the Jacksonville Jaguars, Doug Peterson early on in his career and the trajectory that team was going at the time, but it also takes consistency. When you bring over Liam Coen, and you've seen, if you look at his recent resume, he's a guy who bounced around, whether it was Kentucky, Los Angeles, back to Kentucky, to Tampa Bay. So he's been in these different places. He's been in many different locker rooms, and he's figured out how to deal with people. So many times we're looking at the X's and O's of what coaches can do, and obviously that'll be a big part of what Liam Coen does on the offensive side of the ball, but it's how you deal with the personalities in the locker room. It's how you work with a man who has a wife and has kids and maybe going through something that week, may not be as motivated to lock in on each and everything that's in the offensive or defensive game plan. How do you relate to him? How do you have that conversation with him? How do you get him to focus on the main thing, which is winning football games? Then it's going to also go to having a young general manager as well, right? What did he learn from Les Snead? What did he learn from Sean McVay? How is he able to have those conversations with Liam Coen to give him some of that advice or give him some of that inspiration, some of that experience, some of that knowledge to operate throughout the year? And so I think that every coach has a different way. I think that every coach has to find their own way to not only communicate, to not only coach strategically, but also their own way to say Duval. And I think Liam Coen is working on all those things all at one time.
I like that that subtle shot at Liam's Duval. Ryan, let's get it to Fred Taylor, your buddy, certainly Pivot co-host and Jaguars legend. He's been on our program with us before. We love Freddie T. What on earth do we have to do to get him in the Hall of Fame?
You know, I don't know what the conversations are. You know, I think what's been really cool about doing a show with Fred is talking to running backs or talking to players of his era, players who were before him, players who play now in the present, and the respect that they have for Fred Taylor's game. When you get drafted 9th overall, you're obviously an ultimate talent, but it was the production on the field. It was the success. I think it's hard when you're a small market team. It's hard when your team didn't have a ton of success, so you didn't get those big game moments. I mean, how many times have you guys seen the immaculate reception? You know, how many times have we seen the catch, right? All of these things are important because they were these big moments on these amazing stages. Eli Manning, who didn't get in this year, we all believe that he will. And why will he? Because he made big plays on the biggest stages. And so I think some of those conversations about Fred make it a little difficult for him to get in, maybe over some of these other guys. But when you cut the film on, if you walk into a room of football players and you say, is Fred Taylor a Hall of Famer, everybody in that room is going to raise their hand. And so I do believe one day he gets in. I hate that he's having to continue to wait, but I don't think having someone put that gold jacket on you, whether it's, you know, now or later, will make a big difference once you finally have it.
Couple more for Ryan Clark of ESPN and the Pivot Podcast here on Helmets and Heels. You can find Ryan on X at RealRClark25. Ryan, our attention now turns to the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis this week. Of course, the Combine is about much more than just the action on the field at Lucas Oil Stadium and those workouts. For you, what is the biggest storyline that we will be talking about coming out of Indianapolis this week?
You know, I don't really know. To be honest, I think that's the beauty of the Combine. You know, will it be someone whose numbers jump off the charts? Obviously, Shedeur Sanders is not working out. So I think now some of these other quarterbacks, guys like Tyler Shue of Louisville, who's a little bit older, but who I got to watch in person, that can flat out spin it. You know, will he have one of those days or one of those weeks at the Combine that pushes him up the draft board? You know, what wide receiver, what will Travis Hunter do when you look at his 40? Is he going to be a low 4.4 guy? Is he going to be a 38 vertical guy? Who else pops out and does something tremendous? And so I believe the Combine is one of those things that we will overreact to, right? We will probably cover in the media a little bit too much, but there will be some of these young men who on Monday morning or whoever on the day that they get an opportunity to perform, they will get to etch their names on different draft boards in a different way than they were before the Combine started.
Ryan, before we let you go, I do want to ask you your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence. We've had a lot of talks of Trevor Lawrence and maybe what's been holding him back or things that have gone wrong these last few years, but now Liam Coen here and what he was able to do with the Will Levis in college and then Baker Mayfield this last year. What are your thoughts on Trevor and expectations for this season?
You know, I got to meet Trevor when he was really young. on the high school circuit, and just an ultimate talent and an amazing human. Like, I just want to say that, first and foremost. And I think he has everything that you need. I think he has competitive drive. I think he has talent and just the physical tools to be an all-time great quarterback. And we've seen spells of that, but we haven't seen it in the last year and a half or so. And Trevor Lawrence has to regain his confidence. Trevor Lawrence has to believe he is who everyone's always said he was, who he was drafted to be, who he was paid to be when he got this new contract. It almost seems when you watch the film, he doesn't have a confidence in himself to just go out and let it spin, to just go out and play. And it's disappointing because under Doug Peterson, you thought you were seeing that. You thought Trevor Lawrence was going to take his place with the Joe Burrows, with the Josh Allen, with the Lamar Jackson. And it just hasn't happened. And I believe it has to happen early with Liam Coen. I don't necessarily mean early in the season, but this year has to show growth. This year for Trevor Lawrence has to say that from a mental standpoint, I'm ahead of the game. And now my physical tools can do and work in the way that they're supposed to. And I believe if he struggles this year, you're going to have to start to ask the question, is Trevor Lawrence the quarterback for us? And when you give a guy the type of money that Trevor received, you don't want to be asking that question. But if I had to bet on him based on his talent, based on his moxie, based on his experience, based on what the kid is made of, I know he's going to do everything in his competitive power to be as good as he can possibly be.
Hey, Mia here, and thanks so much for watching 1010XL Jaguars. For even more coverage of the Big Cats, be sure to subscribe to 1010XL Jaguars.